Hello again, I am super pumped for this video because we are going to be showing some real progress. We'll be displaying the information, the story from our scriptable object within our game. We'll be talking about public methods and we'll be talking about return types. And although we're not doing a huge amount of coding, there is going to be some complexity, conceptual complexity. So get your thinking hat on, get your concentration goggles ready because this is going to be the real deal. Okay, let's jump in and get started. Let's briefly summarize our challenge, our problem that we're solving at the moment, and that is to have the information, the text that is within our scriptable objects, our asset files, to be placed into our text area on our canvas, our story text area. We're using adventuregame.cs. Let's have a look at that, adventuregame.cs, to say what should be going into the text component.txt, but we have a separate file or a separate script that has the information within it. So there is our challenge, and that's going to require us to dig into a couple of new concepts. One is public methods, and the other is return types. Let's have a look at that. We've looked before at the definition of a method, or we could call this a function, where we have the return type, we have the name, we have parameters. We can also add at the start the access modifier, which will determine the scope of use. So all of our methods, when we create them, if there's no keyword in there, there's no access modifier keyword, they are private by default. So what does private mean, and how does that compare to public? Well, let's consider two classes, or two scripts that we have here. This is class A and this is class B. So this is script A, script B. And within this, we have a private method, so it's method 1, and we have a public method. And we're using the keyword, just jump back up here, we're using the keyword in front of it, public or private. So if it is private, this method is only accessible within class A. It's not accessible anywhere else. If it's public, then it's accessible globally. So class B could not call method 1 because it's private, but it could call method 2 because it's public. So that's public versus private. Essentially, making something public makes it global that you can access anywhere in your code. Now let's talk about return types. That's the other concept in this lecture. If we have void, which is what we've been using, so private void start game, that means there's no return type. It returns nothing when we call this method. What do we mean by that? Well, when we call a method, for example, in previous section we called start game, and that said, okay, do all the things associated with start game. So please execute all of your steps. Now, the method, when it's executing, is saying, cool, I'm doing everything inside my curly braces, just like you asked me to. That's executing the method. Now, if there's no return type, or if there's void return type, void means there's nothing here, no return type, then it's just going to say, job done, have a nice day. There's nothing else to see here, nothing else to do. I did my things, and then that's it. However, if there is a return type, then the method is going to execute all of the things in its curly braces, and then it's going to say, hey, here's a piece of data for you back to the place where it was called from. And our code is going to say, hey, thanks, I needed that information. Okay, a little bit oversimplified, but we'll go and execute that now so you can see it hands-on. I just wanted to create a really clear pattern that you call a method. If there's a return type, then there is data that will be returned in addition to whatever steps the method might be executing at that moment. So the place that we're going to set up our public method will be in our state.cs. In here, we're looking to create a new public method that will be of return type string and will return our story text variable. And all of that context is leading up to your challenge. A nice juicy challenge for you, create a public method. So create a public method, we'll call it getStateStory, that'll be the name of our method. Use the string return type, and we're going to contain one statement, and that statement will be just returning. It will use the return keyword to return our story text variable. So we've already created our story text variable here, so that is what we want to return. So go ahead and create this method. It should be public, string return type, and it has within the curly braces, it's returning story text. So give that your best shot using what we've talked about in this lecture, and I'll show you my solution when we're back. Okay, welcome back. Give myself a couple of lines. On line 10 here, I'm going to start off by declaring our access modifier, which will be public, and it's of type string, and our name is getStateStory. We need to put our brackets on the end to show that we don't have any parameters. That'll be coming in the future, but for now we have no parameters in this section of the course. And then curly brackets, hit enter, and you can see that Visual Studio automatically lines everything up in line for us, but now we're indented one level to show that this sits underneath getStateStory, and I'll simply say return story text, semicolon. Now that's our public method that we've created in here. That's the structure of it. Hopefully you went well with that challenge and yours matches what I've done here. And the next step for us is to do what? Well, it's to call getStateStory. So somewhere we need to say, I would like for you, state.cs, to execute this particular method. When you do so, I would like you to return to me whatever is currently within story text. Let's just remind ourselves what is in story text. Over here you can see on starting state, we have story text and we have all this story text in here. So this is our end goal, is to return that information into our text box in here. So to do that, we will go to adventuregame.cs. We first want to start by saying, well, we need to know what our starting state is. So we can start our game at some point. So I'm going to serialize field here, serialize field. Now I'm going to specify that our type must be a state. We can't put anything else in this variable except for a state, and I'll call it starting state. So it's very clear. Save that. For now, we'll go do that, jump back into the engine, and you can see if you give it a moment on the game object here, we have just popped into view starting state, and we have none. So let's grab our scriptable object asset starting state and drag that over into starting state. Of course, you could click the selector here, and there'll be just one asset to put into there. Now we know what the starting state is. It's all ready. It's saying, okay, cool, I know you want me to look at that, but what do you want me to do with it? Okay, well, back into adventuregame.cs. Now we need a way to continually know what state we're in. And to do that, we'll create a variable here, which will be of type state. And I know this is going to be a little bit confusing, but bear with me, and it will be named state. So the first part of this is the type. The type we're deriving from our class over here. So we have this class that's called state, and within this we're going to have all of our state information. What's the story saying and where can you go to next? So that's the notion of our state class. And so this has to be of type state, and we're going to call it state as a variable. This is what state are we currently in. We've created a starting state, and now we have what's our current state. We could call it current state or ongoing state, but we'll call it state just to be nice and to the point about what we're doing. Now, down in our start method here, we want to define what state currently is. So state at the moment, what do you think state is at the moment? State is assigned as starting state at the start. What state are we presently in? Well, we're in starting state. What is starting state? We've already gone and hooked up starting state in our inspector by dragging in our starting state scriptable object, which has all of our story information contained within there. We can add to that and remove to that without having to worry about going and messing around in here. So that's a lovely flow that we have there. Okay, so we know our starting state, and that's what state is currently assigned as. And our last step is calling our public method that we've created. So we do that by saying state.getStateStory, and then brackets at the end. So you can see here, this is our public method name, and we have our variable here, and this is variable of type state. So that's allowing us to access our state class within here, and because we're accessing our state class, we have access to our public getStateStory method. So let's make sure this all works before we pat ourselves on the back. Give it a save, skippity-doo-dah back into our game, click on play, and all going to plan. It shouldn't throw us an error. Click on play again. It's thinking, holding us in suspense. Okay, and there we see, wonderful, we have our text updating into our game, and it's pulling from our scriptable object. And you know what? I know that this can be a little bit confusing. For now, you don't need to understand exactly how you would do this on your own. For now, we're following it. You're getting into the rhythm. You're practicing. If this is the first time you've ever seen public methods and accessing different parts of our code from different scripts, then don't worry about it. It gets clearer as we go on. This is the starting point. This is the foundation that we're going to build on. So just as a recap, in this lecture, we have created our public method. We have a return type of story text. return type of string, and it's returning story text. What is story text? That's the information that we have within the scriptable object, and then we are using that information within our adventure game.cs script by saying what is the state we are currently in. We're starting off at state is our starting state, and then we know that we need to display the text component.text, display what our state.getStateStory is, and the getStateStory is our story text from over in here. Okay, so great work in this lecture. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.